Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Coleman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold. This is our post-match show of Fulham's 5-4 loss to Manchester City. Yes, I said the score right, 5-4. They lose, but there's a lot to talk about with this match. Fulham come up short against Manchester City. The question is why? That's a big question, and that's something that we're going to be tackling during the show. There's a lot of good that came out of this, but there's some things I really want to dive into. We'll talk about during the show. I also want to mention we are live in many places, but if you want to comment, for whatever reason, you can't really comment on X. So I also tweeted out on X with Russ_Goldman and on Cottage Talk the YouTube link. So if you want to comment during the show, because I want a lot of comments for this, please join us, not just live on X, but maybe check us out on YouTube because you can actually comment there. Okay. Mr. Gold, how you doing?
I'm very good, Russ. Good to see you.
Okay, well, we got our friend Chris with us. Chris, we're going to try to make heads or tails of what we watched, but thank you for joining us. I don't know if you've ever experienced anything like what we watched, so we're going to go through. I'm sure you have as a Liverpool supporter. All right, Tony, let's get to opening thoughts before we really break this thing down, and there's a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. Opening thoughts. Just give me first thing that comes to mind when we talk about this match. How are you feeling?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was an absolutely ridiculous game of football in the end. How it all transpired, one of those freak sort of games that you get once in a while, and it just so happened that we were involved in it. Been trying to sort of pick the bones out of it, sort of all of last night, all of today. Now that the sort of emotional roller coaster settled down a bit, and I'm sure we'll go into depth and detail. But obviously, having sort of had a lot of time to sort of reflect and sort of go over the game again, I think what we cannot get away from is obviously we got caught up in the hubbub in that last sort of 35 minutes of the game, which sort of took the sting out of what happened in that, previous 55 minutes. But that previous 55 minutes up until that, crazy period, Fulham were woeful, Russ. We were absolutely woeful. And, we need to talk about it because it was bad. It was really bad.
It was, Tony, and we are going to talk about what we watched before everything changed in the second half. Before there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good to talk about. The response, we're going to talk about that. There's so much good to talk about with that. But when we talk about this, when I look back at it, and this is going to sound bad, okay? But I'm just going to let it rip myself. Missed opportunity because how Fulham were set up. Missed opportunity. I think Fulham were set up to stop Manchester City from playing. This is my opening thoughts. And I understand where that comes from, okay? I've seen it too many times. Stop the team from playing and maybe you can stay in the match. Instead of doing something, believe it or not, I was thinking about this, Tony. What would Roy Hodgson do if he was manager now? I'll go back to when he would face Sir Alex Ferguson, when they were coming to Fulham, would he play back looking for a draw? No. He would listen, Fulham were always playing for a draw with Roy Hodgson on the road, it seemed. But at Craven Cottage, he treated it like a fortress and did not play passive or play to basically safe. And I'll get to that in just a bit. The approach for me was to keep it close and play it safe instead of doing what we saw in the second half. Doing, in a way, you could say what they did at Manchester City, at Tottenham, where they didn't play it safe. They were aggressive. But I think Marco gave a lot of respect to this Manchester City side, a lot of respect to Pep Guardiola. I get that. That hasn't worked over the years. Why not change something different? Go against type. Show Pep something he wasn't ready for. That was one of my keys to victory. And I want to say he actually showed that in the second half. The approach for me was disappointing, Tony.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, that too much thought went into the opposition and how we need to be, defensively safe, rather than approaching the game. And I think we spoke about it on Saturday, Russ, about it being a free hit after getting
Right.
that result at Tottenham. Why not go into that City game with a similar lineup, nice and positive, on the front foot, yeah, with pace and purpose, and really, really take it to them. And what Marco Silva did, and this isn't a Manchester City of old under Pep Guardiola. This is a Manchester City side that, has definitely, is not as strong as it used to be. But obviously, they've got deadly players in all positions that can hurt you if you give them opportunity. So if you're going to line up the way that Marco Silva lined up, then you have to be really rigid and not give away, poor goals, because the minute you give away poor goals like we did, and then within sort of 37 minutes, you're 2-0 down and chasing the game, then the two holding midfield players, they become sort of obsolete almost automatically, because it hasn't worked. That hasn't worked. So it was disappointing how Marco Silva, set up and approached the game from the off. Very disappointing.
So again, listen, I want to give the players a lot of credit for how they responded. And Marco responded from, I want to say, the error of how he set it up. Because again, I think he proves that by the substitutions to begin the second half. You don't do that unless you're basically saying, you know what? I didn't get this right. I'm going to change it. So, and then everything changes, right? So I understand why he did what he did, Tony, but you're coming off of these two victories. You're coming off of going to a difficult place, even though they're terrible at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. You're beating that team. You're full of confidence. Why would you play this way? Because, again, reverted to type, decided to play it safe. And that's where I'm going to start. I want to start. We're going to go to the Cottage Talk talking points. And again, we're starting to get a lot of people joining us. Please feel free to share your comments with us. I definitely want to hear from the Fulham supporters about this match. But this is where we're going to start, Tony. And I'm already going there. Save Silva returns against Manchester City. Tony, we didn't have Save Silva against Tottenham Hotspur. We didn't get that. You want to know what we had? What told me that this is going to be stopping the opponent and trying to keep it close was a couple things. I want to give him credit for starting ESR because that ended up working. We'll talk about Emile Smith-Rowe. That's a huge positive to come out of this. But when you decide to play Berge and Lukic together, and oh, by the way, keeping Samuel Chukwueze out from starting, you're telling me this is what you're going to do. You're more concerned about stopping City than trying to win the game. You want to stop them. So I get that to a point, but as you said, that goes out the window once they score. Once they score, it goes out the window. And then you have to, I will say, go to a plan B. This is a plan B, but it's a plan B that I just wish didn't happen to be, and it could have been the plan A here. It could have been the main plan. Take it to him, because what I learned during the match and what Man City is they are a good side. They're a very good side, but this is not the Man City from 10 years ago. This is a team that was actually there to be taken advantage of. We proved that. Fulham proved that. But the approach was wrong. The approach was safe. Tony, your thoughts on Safe Silva once again?
Yeah, look, I understand why. I understand why he did it, and I understand the thought process behind it. Unfortunately, Russ, for Marco Silva last night, the reality is that the back five, and that includes Leno, they let him down last night, Russell, because the back four and Leno defended appallingly.
Terribly. No,
they
you're
were
100%.
Absolutely abysmal. And ultimately, because and then obviously the two in front, I mean, Sasha Lukic, I promise you, I haven't seen a poorer Fulham performance from a player in recent memory as Sasha Lukic, in that first sort of 35, 40 minutes last night. He was absolutely woeful. Woeful. So your back five plus your 2 holding midfield players haven't done the jobs that they've been put in there to do. Right now, before Haaland scored on 17 minutes, he had a great opportunity. 1v1. You put your mortgage on him scoring it, hit the post. The warning signs were there. We didn't wake up. Anderson and Bassi, and particularly Tete and Sessegnon, they would just run ragged all night, and they were really poor. Their positioning was poor. Their decision making was poor. Their distribution was poor, and it ended up. And you cannot be that poor against a side with the players that Manchester City have, because they will hurt you. And they hurt us last night, Russell. For 55 minutes, they absolutely hurt us.
Well, let's be honest here. They should have scored 7 goals, if we're being fair.
100%.
Okay? He hit the post twice, minimum. Haaland hit the post twice, okay? So it should have been 7. So that just tells you, again, credit to them, but also how shambolic defensively Fulham were. 1 in the first half, he hits the post. In the second half, I believe it was a header. That was a little bit more contested, but I mean, they were running right through Fulham from the get-go. The get-go. And they're set up not to do this. And that's the painful part. And we'll go through the goals individually in the second half of the show, because there's, like you said, there's blame to go around. There are players that I am very fond of that made mistakes that were involved in these goals, right? I mean, there's no question about it. But I have to start the show not only by talking about defensively what you're talking about, Tony, but I just think that if you're going to do this, like you said, you have to be rock solid at the back. You have to be, or you're setting yourself up for this. Now, I've seen some comments of people comparing this to the Juventus match. This is very different than the Juventus match. And plus, we actually won the Juventus match, so I understand the comeback part of it. Absolutely, okay. But in this case, it's
Russ. They're gonna harp on about the comeback bit. And listen, it was exciting. As a fan, when you're in that position, 5-1 down, and suddenly,
but they lost, Tony. We have to understand they lost.
It's papering over the cracks, Russell. Of the fact of the matter is, and there's reasons why. Manchester City, their intensity levels dropped. They thought it was done. They switched off. And football's very difficult. You can't. It's not. It's not like a running tap of water. You can't turn it on and turn it off. You have to be in it at all times. So that comeback papers over the cracks. And honestly, Russell, we had. That first 55 minutes was shambolic. It was shambolic. And if we defend like that on Sunday against Crystal Palace, it will be a very similar. It will be a very similar picture and situation. And the thing is that Fulham won't have it in them to show that sort of fight and comeback again, because, you can't keep on, defending that way and conceding goals in that manner. Can't.
No. And listen, we'll definitely preview Crystal Palace. I agree with you on that. They cannot do that again. That's a team that can play with serious intensity. And if you make a mistake on them, they're going to kill you. We've already seen that. We know what that looks like. Unfortunately, I do think that there's an opportunity against Crystal Palace. Of
course,
if Fulham have learned anything from those 2 matches last season that they lost to, I'm telling you, there is an opportunity. The approach has to be right. And I'll talk about that in more detail when we preview that match later on in the week. But there is hope to rebound from this. And like I said, there are good things to take out of it. But the one place I want to go next, going along with Save Silva, talking about the decisions with the starting 11, I'm going to say it, Tony. I've been talking about it, and I know you're going to agree with me on this. And I know what's coming up with AFCON, and you're going to have Iwobi leaving. I think it's an opportunity to change things up. I do not want to see Berge and Lukic together. It's time to scrap it. It doesn't work, Tony. It absolutely doesn't work. If I'm Marco and I'm looking at AFCON and you're going to lose Iwobi, make a decision. You can mix and match Lukic and Berge, one starting, and then this is your opportunity to play Emile Smith-Rowe and Josh King together. This is the opportunity. Scrap this crap. It doesn't work, Tony. This double pivot does not work.
100%. If anything came out of last night that was absolutely 100% substantial, it was the fact that, this Berger and Lukic loving that Marco Silva has finally broken the camel's back. It's finished. It's done. Fulham are a completely different side when they revert to, having those two playing in that position, as opposed to being, much more, braver on the front foot and playing a much more attacking, freestyle football with a bit more pace and purpose in terms of the final third. And it showed it last night. It was there for everybody to see. It was there for everybody to see against Tottenham and even Sunderland. So, 100%, Russ, that relationship is finished. It's over. It's time to move on.
Now, if he continues to do this, then I don't know what else to say, because what more proof does the guy need? It simply doesn't work. And I saw a comment. When was the last time it worked? I don't even know the last time it actually worked. And I've completely changed my mind, Tony. I'm like, well, against the big six clubs, maybe you roll this out. I'm saying absolutely not. Enough. It just doesn't work. It's basically trying to limit the damage instead of doing what we saw in the second half. Now, I know what you just said. Maybe they let their guard down. They're up 5-1, and it's hard to turn it back on. Yes, I get that. But I think if the approach was different, and we're talking about if Marco did not start with these two players, I know it's hindsight. I have to feel things would have been different. I have to feel we wouldn't be talking about 5-4. It would have looked completely different, Tony, if he decided not to start Berg and Lukic together. It's time to get rid of it.
Yeah, I think it's not so much necessarily whether it works or if it doesn't work, because I think there are certain opposition and teams where, it is effective. But in terms of how Fulham are from an offensive point of view, as you saw clearly against Tottenham and last night, when we play with technically better players, players that play with a bit more, attacking threat, less fear, and when we got a little bit more pace, we look a completely different side, Russell. And it's a side that you want to watch. It's a side that you enjoy, getting behind and watching because it's exciting. And I'd rather lose a game playing exciting football.
So would I.
Than watch that crap that I watched in the first half last night, where we got absolutely, handed our backsides to us. And it got to a point where it got so embarrassing. It was almost funny. It was almost funny to watch. I was like turning to my son and went, right, number 6 is on its way soon. And then it could even be number 7. I mean, That's the way it was heading, Russ. That's how bad it was getting.
It was, Tony. And again, I would say, yes, I would say scrap it. There are certain situations I'm going to basically walk it back a little bit. If you're seeing a match out, I could see it. Again, it did work against Tottenham to basically, if you're trying to get more defensive and see it out, I could see that. But I'm talking about from the get-go, if you're trying to start a match and you are, and this is part of your game plan, I just think it just doesn't seem to work. Like you said, I think it stifles your creativity. It does not get enough technical players on the pitch that could hurt a team. You get rid of one of them, you put Iwobi, it's literally like dominoes. Everything falls into place. If you put this back in, now all of a sudden you're tighter and you're basically sending a completely different message to what the match is going to be. Guardiola knows that. Guardiola knows, and his players know that they can just attack for him. They know the weaknesses. But if you throw Iwobi in there like they did in the second half and they're scrambling when the goals are coming in, then this is why I said show Pep Guardiola something he's not ready for. That's what it would have been. Starting Iwobi in there, playing Chukwueze on the left. I guess we'll never know. Maybe he'll do that at the Etihad. The one thing that gets me about coming out of this, Tony, is that, and again, I understand that because we always do this. Well, they played well, right? They played well. They were, I'm going to make the argument that they should have gotten some from it, okay? You can make all that argument. The bottom line is that they still lost the match. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is, aren't you sick and tired of losing to this team and just accepting it? Don't accept it. Try a different way. And that's the whole thing. This to me is basically just doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. The result's the same. They're going to score goals, Tony. They're going to score goals. You're going to get behind. And in this case, your players basically just said enough and took it to this team. And Marco changed it up. And it actually, like I said, it worked. It almost worked to get them something out of it. But in the end, it simply started, in my opinion, with the approach of having this double pivot and then not starting Chikwueze. I was very disappointed by that. And people were coming at me that like basically not happy with my take on that. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. It's my take.
But in addition to that, Russell, in addition to the way that Marco Silva set us up, those 7 players didn't perform in that first 55 minutes or 50 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever way you want to, look at it, until he made the changes at half time. The reality is, I'd love to know what tactical instructions Marco Silva gave Sasa Lukic and Sander Berge before the game.
I don't know.
Because they were there to plug those holes that Foden and Haaland, exploit, and they do it very, very well.
Yeah.
They're 2 of the best players in the world, regardless of whatever, people think of them. Haaland is without doubt the best striker in the world, arguably, and Phil Foden has found a great run of form. So those are the 2 players, and Doku as well, obviously a danger. So those are the 3 players in those forward areas that you've got to manage, maintain, and make sure that you make it very difficult for them, right? And I did, when I'm watching the first 15, 20 minutes, I'm thinking to myself, what's Marco Silva actually said to these players? We're standing off them. We're not getting tight enough. The first goal was catastrophic, just ball watching. These are Premier League players, Ross, playing the highest level of football.
Ryan Sessions, right
reacting.
there.
Yeah, correct. Not reacting to danger, not seeing the danger. And the guy's right off his shoulder. Where's the communication? Who's talking? Who's organising? All of those things, Russell, they get overlooked, but they're so important. Yeah. And for me, in that first 35, 40 minutes, whatever, we just seem to be lacking on all of those levels across the pitch. Yeah. And that's what was disappointing.
I get you, my friend. We'll talk about the individual goals, and it might take us a little bit when we actually break down the match. But I have a couple more talking points, and we're going to change the mood a little bit. We're going to start to talk about some of the positives to come out of it. So let's start here. And I think this is a major one, Tony, a huge one. Okay. Now we're starting to see, and he's acting different. You can tell ESR is starting to look like the player Fulham hoped he would be, Tony. Let's get into this a little bit, because I think this could really be such a positive to come out of this. We've now seen it in a few matches, but you've said this in the last match, he looked hungry, and he was actually very aggressive against Manchester City, to the point where I don't even think I've seen him to that level. I think this is what probably Marco wanted to see last season. We're now seeing it.
Not only am I pleased for Emil Smith-Rowe, Russ, but I'm proud of him, because he's starting to show, and actually I felt sorry for him last night, because, as you said, the one bright spark to come out of that first 45 minutes, and believe me, there was very little. He was the shining bright spark for Fulham in that 45 minutes. I thought he was excellent.
Yep.
He worked hard. He tried to create. He tried to make things happen. He was getting into good spaces. He was, really good decision-making when he was in those areas. He looked hungry. He looked fit. He looked sharp. And everything around him was falling apart. He didn't let his head go. He kept at it. He kept working hard. And look, we're starting to see the player that we all wanted to see and expect to see. And it's so important now, Russell, that Marco Silva keeps him in the team. He has to play on Saturday, and I hope he plays with Josh King. I really do, because that is the partnership that will take this team up the table towards Europe. I am telling you, those 2 will click, and get in this team, that will be the difference. And Emil Smith-Rowe needs to play in this Fulham team now regularly, without any shadow of a doubt.
So I'm glad that you said that. I mentioned it earlier, that I'm hoping that eventually we get to the point where we see the 2 of them playing together. Now, here's the thing. Over the summer, they played a lot together, but it was Emil Smith-Rowe on the wing. I want them centrally together, and I think that could be extremely dynamic. I keep hearing about the loss, still hear about the loss of Andreas Pereira. I don't want to get you started, okay? But the interesting part is that you have two central midfielders in Josh King and Emil Smith Rowe that you could say that they're both vying for the same position. My whole thing is why? Because as people have told me, Josh King has played the number 8 role for England, for the U team. So why can't he do it for Fulham? Why not? So for me, I hope we see this sooner than later. I know Marco's been asked a bunch of times, but the good thing is that Emil Smith Rowe is going to make this harder and harder for Marco not to start him, and he should start him. But I hope it doesn't end up being that he's not going to start Josh King, because that's wrong. That's dead wrong, Tony.
Where does this notion come that midfield players can't rotate? I don't understand. We've become so fixated with playing one holding midfield player, two holding midfield players. Look, Russell, midfield players are midfield players. Midfield players should be able to be box to box, regardless of, whether one holds, one sits, one presses, one goes wide, whatever. Midfield players are midfield players. Josh King and Emil Smith Rowe can 100% play in the same team together. They are not similar players at all, actually. They are both very different players. And ultimately, both of them should be in this Fulham team, because both of them are technically very good footballers who, can turn a game. And ultimately, we've got to get away from this nonsense that they can't do this and they can't do that. Yes, they can. You've just got to give them the opportunity and give them the freedom to go and express themselves. And this is where I think Marco Silva needs to develop himself a little bit to say, do you know what? I'm going to be brave. I'm going to put my trust in you. Go and express yourselves. I don't want you getting back doing the donkey work in our 6-yard and 18-yard box. What I want you to do is be expressive in the final third and go and win us football matches.
Right.
That's what we should be doing.
Totally agree, Tony. Totally agree. And we'll see what Marco does. Like I said, there is an opportunity for what we're talking about to happen. The question is, will it happen? And I really hope it does. All right. More positivity coming your way. We started off a little negative. We're going to continue a little positive. We have to talk about Samuel Chukwueze. Dynamic against Manchester City. Again, we could put aside the fact that he starts only the second half, comes on as a substitute, Tony. But you want to talk about hungry. You want to talk about a player that seems to have the ability to, I talk about this with Ryan Sessegnon, a nose for goal. Samuel Chukwueze plays without any fear. Samuel Chukwueze will probably shoot from anywhere. I'm going a little too far, but I think you know what I mean on this. He sees an opportunity. He doesn't wait. His 2 goals were fantastic, but it wasn't just the goals. It's what he offers, Tony. Let's talk about Chukwueze, because, again, I hate to go back to this. I think it was a mistake not to start him.
Huge mistake. His impact was sensational. I mean, best player on the pitch after 46 minutes, without any shadow of a doubt. Absolutely gutted that we're going to be losing him to the AFCON. That's a real blow for us, because he's such an outlet for us, and obviously, potentially a massive game changer as we saw last night. And as providing moving forward, we defend better and don't give away, poor goals like we did. He's going to win us a lot of games, but obviously we're not going to have him for a few months, which is absolutely gut wrenching. But I'll tell you now, Russell, Fulham, Tony Khan, McIntosh, Shad Khan, they need to get that contract in front of him, and they need to get him signed ASAP, because he will get snapped up very quickly, very, very quickly, if it's not done. And I didn't realise how good this lad is until I've seen it now with my own eyes. And trust me, he is a very good player, and could have an unbelievable future with this football club. But Fulham need to get their asses in gear and need to get that sorted out ASAP.
I totally agree, Tony. And listen, I want to give a lot of credit to Steve Reynolds, who told me about Chukwueze probably about a year and a half ago, and said, listen, we need to get this kid. And I remember it was last January where I started to see the speculation on him. And it didn't happen then. And Steve kept saying, trust me when I tell you he can help us. And then, of course, he finally comes to us, and now you're seeing why Steve, who watched him a lot at Villarreal, then he goes to Milan and it didn't work for him, but it's worked with us. It is a perfect fit. So, yes, please sign him permanently. Just get it done. Please get it done. All right, Tony, one final topic before we break down the match, and it's this. I'm just going to ask you outright. Oh, looks like I might have lost Tony for a second. Let's see here. Hopefully he's going to be back. So I'm just going to ask the question, did Fulham deserve a point or more from the match? And I feel totally that they did deserve a point. And it's difficult because I just am disappointed. It's funny when I look back at the match and I look back at these matches against Manchester City, I just see we always talk about that they're coming close, that they're able to just about be there, but they cannot get over the line. Tony, are you back with me?
Yeah, sorry, Russ, not sure what happened there.
Okay, no problem. It's okay. It's okay, not a problem there, Tony. As long as I have you. Lost your
I'm
camera.
back now. I'm back. Sorry about that.
Okay. I don't have your camera, but at least I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, got you.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to ask a question. Did Fulham deserve a point from this match, or maybe even more? Just your gut feeling.
No, they didn't, Russ, is the honest truth. And honestly, if they had got that, equalise, it would have been one of the greatest comebacks of probably Premier League history, is the honest truth. But no, the reality is that we would have, it just would have been one of those crazy moments. But no, ultimately, over the 90 minutes, Manchester City were, head and shoulders way above any level that we were at, certainly from a defensive point of view.
Right.
And yeah, listen, as I said, I think they took their foot off a little bit. They got complacent and then really struggled to find that rhythm and tempo again. And Fulham took full advantage of it. And fair play to them for doing that. But you can't give Manchester City a 5-goal head start and expect to get anything from the game. And I think someone mentioned it earlier. When you score 4 goals against Manchester City and come away with defeat, it just tells you how we just threw it away. It's just crazy.
Well, right. And again, this is where I'm going on this, Tony. They probably didn't deserve a point, but and I'll just pose it a little bit differently. And again, we'll never know. And I've already said it before. If Fulham are set up differently and Marco takes a different approach, do you think the match plays out this way, or do you think it's completely different? Because I think it would be completely different.
I have to agree with you. I think it would be different because when you're playing on the front foot and you're taking the game to a team, suddenly Manchester City, have to adjust to the way they play because they won't be so brazen coming forward. Because if you've got, players on the back foot, suddenly Foden has to do a bit of defending. Haaland would have to drop in deeper. Doku would have to worry. So you're pressing them back, but we didn't. We allowed them to come onto us, and that's so dangerous when you're playing a side like Manchester City with the players they've got. They can hurt you, and they really hurt us. Really hurt us.
Absolutely, and that's why I again, it's hindsight. What happens if we approach it differently? I think it would look differently. I don't know if the result would be different, but I know the way the game was played would have been completely different. So that's why I asked the question. And I understand why you're saying that they probably didn't deserve a point. I'm just disappointed, Tony, as I said, while we were trying to figure out your camera situation, that I just don't like going into a match. And I've heard Marco say, they're always going in, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, to win. I don't feel that when you go against a team like this and you decide that you're more concerned about stopping them, that you're going for the win. I think you're going to try to keep it close. And that's what I'm sick of giving all of this respect. I want Fulham to, like I said, if it was 5-1 and Fulham had the approach that you and I are talking about, I could live with that a hell of a lot better than the 5-1 that we saw. Like say it ended 5-1, but they went for it. I feel better. I don't feel good about those opening stages. I love the response. Okay, the response is great, and we should be talking about the response. What I don't want to let not be talked about is that, and I'm sorry people might not like this, they lost the match. They lost the match, okay? Yeah. We're talking about, in glowing terms, how they played after the first 55 minutes, which we should be doing, and we have focused on that. But they let this opportunity to take it to this team who obviously got pushed by Leeds United. Why can't Fulham push them? And there is some vulnerability there. But he went to the way he normally plays against this team. And it simply didn't work. And that was a disappointment. I don't want to accept Fulham losing before I turn on to watch the match to Man City. Just accept it. Why do I have to accept it? I shouldn't have to accept it. We shouldn't have to accept it. We should accept that we're going to try to win the match, that we're going for it. And like I said, I used Roy Hodgson, who I know was defensively known that his style as a manager, but at Craven Cottage, sometimes, again, I saw no fear in Roy's teams at Craven Cottage. No fear. And like I said, different story on the road. So I was just a little disappointed by the approach. And I guess I'll always struggle with that because I want Fulham to be better than they are. I don't want them to be mid-table. I want them to beat a team like this and feel that they can continue to do that. Knocking on the door is good. How about actually running through the door? That's what I want, Tony. I want them to beat Man City. We've done it against Liverpool. We've done it against Arsenal. We've beaten Tottenham now. Why can't we beat Man City? That's, to me, having the idea that there's no chance. There was a chance. In my opinion, the approach was wrong. Anyways, let's take a little break. So coming up next, Tony and I are going to break down both halves. Yes, we're going to talk about all 9 goals. That might take us a little bit, but we'll get through it. And then we'll end with man of the match. All right, Tony, let's get to it. All right. So the match begins, and right off the bat, you have this opportunity, slicing Fulham right open. You got Erling Haaland going through and hits the post. That was the warning, right? That was the warning signal because that should have been the back of the net. He should have scored then. So that should have been basically alarms should have been going off there that, it's going to be one of these matches. And it turned out to be one of these matches, okay? So we have that to start off. So all of us, as I'm watching, probably you're watching, we're thinking, oh, no, this is not starting well. This could go down a bad path, and it did. So let's now talk about the first goal. And I am a huge fan. And you and I have talked about how well defensively Ryan Sessegnon has played, Tony. He's right there, but he's not tight against Erling Haaland. I know really he's not a central defender, but someone needed to be there. He happened to be there. So it's not just about him. Listen, technically, it's a great goal. It's a great pass. So give them credit. What should Fulham have done there to prevent this goal?
It could have been avoided, Russ. And how it could have been avoided, obviously, you've got to stop the source. Yes, we can talk about Ryan Sessegnon ball watching and not being switched on, and it was poor. But there's still a phase of play that's taken place before that ball's reached Haaland. And the bottom line is that we did not react. Tete didn't cut out the cross.
Nope.
Right. Wasn't close enough to Doku. Needed to be closer. And honestly, you've got to look at the 2 centre halves. What the hell are they doing? What are they doing? And Ryan Sessegnon has actually got 2 players coming in. Haaland obviously is the one player that he hasn't, for whatever reason, he just hasn't reacted. He's just watched the line of the obviously defenders and watched the ball, but he hasn't watched Haaland's movement. And what he should have done is actually just been focused on Haaland. And had he got a yard closer, that goal doesn't happen. Right. It just doesn't happen. So it was just a poor defensive goal. Simple as that. And it could have been so, it was easily avoidable. You cut the cross, that goal doesn't happen.
No, very good there, Tony. And like I said, then Fulham are down 1-0. I do want to mention something before we talk about the second goal from Manchester City is, again, we've been talking about Emile Smith-Rowe, the progress of Emile Smith-Rowe. This is actually a really good shot from Emile Smith-Rowe later on. that he, again, you could say he tests the goalkeeper a little bit,
It was a good
but
chance.
but it was a good opportunity, right? This was a quality opportunity that, again, a player who you could see his confidence is growing, because I don't know if he takes that 2 weeks ago, but he does here. He lets it fly, and it's a great hit. And
It's a great save. Let's be honest with you.
right,
A lot of goalkeepers wouldn't have saved that, Russ. It was a great hand from Donnarumma. He's really got
yep,
down and he's done well. On another day, Smith Rowe scores that.
yeah,
Smith Rowe absolutely scores that. And yeah, listen, it was a good save. That's what he's there for. And obviously, it's kept Manchester City, giving them the momentum, because obviously, if Fulham equalised there, then you never know.
right.
But they didn't. And yeah, at the end of the day, he got in a good position. It was a good shot, good save.
Good save. Yeah. Good point. All right. All right, Tony. Let's now go to the second goal. This one was extremely frustrating because it reminded me of the first one. It reminded me of the opportunity that Holland had hit in the post, except it was Holland setting up the goal. Where did it go wrong on this one?
Poorest goal of the night from Fulham's perspective. Joachim Andersen getting drawn out into no man's land, and then the ball's threaded through between Tete and Bassi, and it's literally, go and fill your boots. And that's exactly what he did. Won't score an easier goal all season. Again, defensively, really poor. Just poor decision-making. Anderson doesn't need to go out there. I don't know what he's thinking. Just keep your line, keep your back four solid, don't get drawn out, and Manchester City have to break it. But we broke it for them and allowed them the opportunity, and that's why they scored. And actually, it was the poorest goal we conceded all night. Really poor goal.
Yeah, this one was bad. And now we're down 2-0. You're thinking, can't get worse, right? Let's just get to halftime. It can't get worse. Well, it got worse. Then now you have off of another opportunity from Manchester City. It's actually Bernd Leno punches it out, but it goes right to Phil Foden, and he puts it in the back of the net. Let's talk about the third goal.
Yeah, listen, great finish. That's what he's got in his locker.
It
That's
is.
what Phil Foden, you give him chances like that, he will take them. Yeah, listen, Leno had a poor game for his standards last night. And I saw some of the nonsense on Twitter afterwards saying, Leno's got to go. No. Leno's this, Leno's that. Dude, honestly, I wonder where these fans come from, Russ, sometimes. I really do. Where they've been living in outer Mongolia. Honestly, it's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, okay, Leno had a bad game. Think about the other 39 games prior to that where he's actually been fantastic for us. So, yeah, listen, he made a poor decision. And if you give Manchester City half chances or even, good chances, they will punish you. And they punished us. It was just another poor decision. Bad goal.
Bad goal. And now Fulham are down 3-0. And at this point, I'm thinking to myself, all over. It's all over. However, shortly after that, and again, let's talk about Emile Smith-Rowe, but also Harry Wilson here, because Harry Wilson obviously sets up the goal. Great opportunity set up by Harry Wilson, but Emile Smith-Rowe heads it in. This is, I want to say, a second or third header for Fulham, which is very interesting. What did you make of the goal from Emile Smith-Rowe? I know how happy you are that he's playing well, but
this is a great goal, Russ.
This is a great goal, right?
Because it's about the technique. Very few, a lot of players would not have scored that goal. He's alert. He's seen the goal. He could only have put it in one place, and he's done. It's a great delivery, but trust me, he's got a lot of work to do there, Russell. And it's a fantastic finish, and it will get overlooked because obviously, Fulham lost last night, and there were a lot of other, really good goals scored last night. But honestly, that for me was the pick of the bunch last night with the Wobies. That was a really great finish, and I was so pleased for Emile Smith-Rowe. And actually, it then gave us a glimmer. A very small glimmer going into the break.
That's right. You and I talked about this at halftime, and that they still had a chance, only 2 goals separated. So at halftime, Marco decides to change things up. And honestly, Tony, I'm glad that he did. I think that he needed to. He doesn't always do it, but I think when you're down 2 goals, you have to basically just say to yourself, you know what, this didn't work. So he takes off Sasa Lukic, who, like you said, had a shocker of a match. Just terrible, okay? Also takes off Kenny Tete, which is interesting takes them both off, and this is when now you have Iwobi go in the middle because you're bringing on Chikwueze and Castagna, which is interesting. What did you make of these substitutions before we talk about what happens next?
Yeah, well, look, I think I was thinking Silva has to now get rid of the two holding midfield players. He has to change it up. With 3-1 down, he's got nothing to lose now. Definitely has to change it up. Obviously, when they came out, I was delighted to see Chikwueze on. Lukic had to go off. He was. I don't know whether he was ill. I don't know. He was just way off it last night. I mean, on so many levels, he was just way off it. Kene Tete was a strange one because I couldn't quite understand, other than the fact that maybe he picked up a knock, wasn't feeling well. I don't know if that was a tactical decision. I don't think it was. I just think something happened to Tete at halftime. Yeah. That's it. And the problem is that Castagna also had an absolute shocker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could tell he's a player that hasn't played for a while. He was, I mean, I probably would have done a better job at right back, and I'm left-footed. So, yeah, he had an absolute shocker. But, yeah, so I'm pleased he changed it up. It was the right thing to do. But then, obviously, having made all of those changes to be positive, within 3 minutes...
3 minutes.
Game over. It was game over from that. Right. From my perspective, it was game over once that goal goes in.
Okay, and we're going to talk about the goal from Phil Foden because Fulham are trying to attack. They counter, and next thing you know, by himself, I hate to say it, it's pretty much by himself, a very dangerous player in Phil Foden, and he beats Leno. Should Leno have done any better on this?
There'll be people that say, I mean, look, it's crept in at his near post, hasn't it? It's gone. Yeah. I mean, it's gone with some power, and maybe if he'd thrown himself at it and gambled a little bit earlier, he might have saved it. I think it's been a bit harsh, but it was the manner in which it got there, Russ. Yeah. That's the thing. It's not so much whether Leno shouldn't have been put in that position. Is the truth. So, and it was just another poor goal, another really poor goal.
Absolutely. Now, the next one, follow that up. This is when you're like, oh, could this be 7 or 8?
Yeah, it was getting stupid.
Once this goes in, we're talking about the fifth goal. Doku basically deflecting it off of
Sanderberg.
Sanderberg, you're thinking, oh no, this could get much worse. Then this could be an all-time terrible loss for Fulham Football Club. 5-1, and again, this is a deflection, and there's nothing really, I think, that Leno can do here. Let's pose it this way: when this goes in the back of the net, were you thinking like me? It's like, let's not make it 7-8-1.
I was thinking this is actually truly embarrassing. It was shockingly bad, and that goal was also really poor because it almost looked like Fulham had given up. It was like they'd thrown the towel in. There was no emphasis to want to work hard to close players down. It was all too easy for Manchester City. And genuinely, at that point, Russell, I told them, they could get 8 here because there was still enough time. I mean, it was only
it was early on.
Minutes. Yeah,
it was 55 minutes.
Something like 30 minutes to go. They could easily get another 3 easily.
Or I was thinking, please tell me it's not going to get up to 10. I mean, I was even thinking like that.
It was definitely heading that way, and it was just a really poor goal. And look, Doku had the opportunity. It was a bit of luck, obviously, that took it in. But yeah, at that point, it was a really low ebb because we were really poor till that point.
Okay, so Fulham are 5-1 down, and we're hoping that it doesn't get worse. Now you have a nice response, and I want to give Alex this is a fantastic goal from Alex Iwobi. And if you watch the response, go back and watch the response from the defenders from Manchester City. They were really upset that they gave up this goal. They were upset about all the goals we're going to talk about next. For whatever reason, this one really upset them because I think they knew that, not that the Fulham were back in the match, but they're, again, that they would be criticized, that they gave up, that they were so far ahead that they would give up a goal like this. Iwobi, listen, great goal, Tony.
So, interestingly, Russ, there's 2 things that happen between 57 and 64 minutes. 57, when Iwobi scores that goal,
Yeah.
And let me tell you, that is a great finish.
Yeah.
That is a great finish. And that goal was the turning point for Fulham in terms of suddenly something clicked. I don't know what happened. Something clicked
Yeah, I agree.
within the whole group, and the whole mentality of the
It
team
changed.
suddenly changed, right? But on 64 minutes, Pep Guardiola made two substitutions that I actually felt helped Fulham and hindered Manchester City. I really do. He
John
took
Stones
off
and yeah.
he took off Nico and he
Yeah.
took off Doku, and he brought on John Stones and Savino,
Yeah.
and that changed the whole dynamic from that point onwards.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm glad that you said that because it got one. Listen, it's hard to say bad to worse for them, but it actually, like you said, it assisted Fulham to have this comeback that came up short. So now we're at 5-2, and you could, like I said, I was actually just checking the numbers. I still can't. Fulham had more possession than Manchester City in this match. How crazy is that? Okay, it is insane. They end up with more possession than Manchester City. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. More possession. They were dominant from that point on. The goal goes in. It's all about Fulham, except for that opportunity from Erling Haaland, which again hits the post. That goes in. And we're not talking globally about a comeback, but still, they have this goal. It's 5-2. Marco then makes a couple of other changes. I think at that point, a little bit later on, he brought on Josh King. Much later on, he brought on Kevin. I know I'm forgetting another substitution. Who am I forgetting?
Kusiasari.
Oh, Kusei. Sorry.
He comes on after Chuck Wasey scores.
Okay, good. Well, because I want to talk about him too. We'll get to talk about him, but let's talk about Chukwueze scoring to make a first goal, 5-3. Both goals seem like carbon copies of each other, but for me, Tony, this is what you wanted from Kevin. Okay, I'm going back to this. This is what you want from Kevin. You want someone that's just going to let it rip with no fear, and this is both goals. This is a great goal.
Yeah, so as I said, Stones and Savino come on. They're not up to speed with the game. Yeah, they're cold. Manchester City have lost a great outlet in Doku. And suddenly now their shape has changed. Chukwueze, another unbelievable finish. Fortunate for the ball to fall to him where it did. But boy, did he absolutely lever that into the back of the net. Now, panic stations kick in. If Manchester City are now looking at it, then literally a minute later, Raul, who's obviously, worked incredibly hard again all night, got nothing to show for it, comes off. Jonah Kusiasari comes on. And then a second later, Emil Smith-Rowe, obviously done his bit for the night, worked really hard. Josh King comes on. And suddenly now you've got youth, you've got enthusiasm, you've got legs, you've got two players that are, brave, got a point to make. And suddenly we're at Manchester City and they're on the back foot.
That's what's crazy about this. And we'll definitely talk about Kusiasari after we talk about Chukwueze's second goal. So, again, it's 5-3, right?
Yep.
Chukwueze now scores, Tony. What did you see of this goal to make it 5-4? And listen, just go ahead.
When it hits the back of the net, I'm literally euphoric. I can't even tell you. I'm screaming, I'm shouting, I'm going mad. My son's jumping on top of me. We're like, oh my God, what is going on? And we're trying to just make sense of what is happening here because there's still 12 minutes to go.
I know.
Plus injury time.
I know.
And you're thinking, there's no way. There's just no, I can't even begin to think what's going on. And yeah, it was just complete chaos. It was just chaoticness all over the place. Chaos everywhere.
Right. So now it's 5-4. Okay. So it's really, as you said, there's basically 20 minutes if you include stoppage time, 8 or 9. It turned out to be 9 minutes. Okay. So you got 21 minutes and you're daring the dream that they could get something from it. Dare, I'm thinking, could they score 2 goals and win it? I can't believe I'm thinking like that. I'm like, there's an opportunity here. And listen, they tried and they definitely tried. The one thing I want to talk about, Kusiasari, is that I'm happy for him because I think he showed us something. Okay, in a short span of time, I want to get your thoughts on Kusesar before we talk about the shout for a penalty. What did you make of him coming on?
Yeah, I think it was a bold move from Silva, a good move. And the truth of the matter is, I want to see more of him, Russ, because I think there's a player there. I think there's a player there that can offer a lot more than he's been given the opportunity to do. So do you know what? I think Silva needs to even up the load for Raul and stop running him into the ground and give this kid some opportunity, because I think he could be a real gem. I really do.
Yeah, and what's interesting, like I said, you could just tell, he's a young kid. He's learning his craft. He's in a really pressure situation. It didn't seem to phase him, and he was into it. Now, the one thing that I do want to talk about, I don't know how you're going to feel when we talk about it or how everyone's going to feel, because I've heard people talk about the penalty. Just so you know, I am very much against trying to create something to be for a penalty. I got to tell you, man, I've watched this back several times. Cruz Asari is trying to create. And listen, I understand it, trying to help his team. He's trying to create this. This is not a penalty for me. Even Gentleman Jim said it's not a penalty. I couldn't believe that. Gentleman Jim said it's not a penalty. I'm like, then it definitely isn't a penalty. Your thoughts?
Never a penalty. Never a penalty. Sometimes when those decisions go against you, you're sitting there and you're going mad and you're thinking, how can the referee? I didn't feel that for 1 second. So I knew immediately, listen, it was a coming together. Yep. It wasn't a penalty. What I was more frustrated about, actually, Russ, was the time it took VAR to come to that decision that our goal was onside. I mean, you could tell.
The crazy one took 3 minutes.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. Absolute madness. You could tell it was onside. Get on with the game. You're killing Fulham's rhythm here. We wanted the game to get going, start again. Yeah. And that 3 minute break,
it was terrible.
It hurt us a little bit. And I was just like, no, we want to get the game started. So I was more worried about that than a decision that, it was never a penalty. Never.
Okay. Very good. All right. So now we get into stoppage time. Now we're getting deep into stoppage time, Tony. Kevin has an opportunity to set up Josh King, which, again, fantastic opportunity. This is, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's inches, but it's cleared off the line. It looks like it's cleared off the line. And if this goes in the back of the net, I don't know. I don't know what I would have done, but it was close, Tony. But I want to give Josh King a lot of credit. I want to give Kevin some credit for, again, his intent here. He comes on, he's barely on, and he sets up an opportunity that almost gave Fulham a crazy point, an amazing point. It just wasn't to be.
Yeah, I mean, God, Russ, if that had gone in, I would have probably woken up the next day in hospital on all kinds of ventilators and machines.
Well, I told you I needed a sedative after
that. It would have been euphoric. I mean, it would have been, as I said, one of the greatest comebacks in Premier League history, if not the greatest comeback in Premier League history. But look, I mean, Kevin did brilliantly to get himself into that position, and that's what you want to see Kevin do. Take the player on the outside, get in and then cut in, inside him to make the defenders have to defend. And we're not seeing it enough from him at the moment. And he needs to be much more direct, a little bit like Doku is for Manchester City. Just be direct, get the ball, run at players, forget all these step overs, cutting inside, going on the outside. Just because he's got the ability and he showed it.
He does.
And he's pulled it back. And look, Josh King was unlucky. I don't think he really connected the way that he wanted to with it. And that's given, obviously, City the opportunity to clear it. I think it was just before it got to the line that they managed to clear it. But look, it would have been sensational. It would have been one of those, moments that go down in history had that gone in. And we'd always look back on that game thinking, wow, that's one game that comes around every decade. Do you know what I mean? That's one game that comes around every decade. But it wasn't to be. Yeah. And Fulham gave themselves too much to do, Russ, in the end. Yeah. They did.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. Like I said, I think did a good job of looking at this match honestly and talk about the good and talk about the bad, and that's what we do here on Cottage Talk. This one I knew was going to be difficult for me personally because I have a hard time just to talking about something in glowing terms when they just lost it. I mean, they lost it, but I don't want to fault the effort. I don't want to fault the players' effort because it was excellent. The comeback was excellent. It just fell a little short. That's just, and like you said, they just gave themselves too much to do. And I think we covered that in this show. All right. We've gone an hour. There was a good amount to talk about. Where's the time gone, man? Anyways, but let's end the show with man of the match. Tony, who's your man of the match?
There's only one player, Russ, and it has to be Samuel Chukwueze.
Samuel Chukwueze. It has to be, right?
I mean, the guy's changed the whole momentum of the game for Fulham, from Fulham's perspective. The most positive player from Fulham's side. Absolutely unbelievable performance. And I'm just gutted that he didn't start the game. Gutted. But it is what it is.
I'm hoping we see more from him. The bad part of Chukwueze is that he's going away for the African Cup of Nations. That sucks. It really does. Just a player that's coming into it, and he's going to be leaving us. I think 2 or 3 matches from now, he's going to be gone. And that, along with Iwobi, let's see.
Yeah, Iwobi and Bassi.
Okay, is this your friend?
Dylan. Yeah, top man.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to be sure that was actually your friend. All right, good stuff. Tony, final thoughts before we go, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Yeah, like I said, it wouldn't be Fulham without that sort of performance, would it, Russ? And the same things that we're talking about. Yeah. Look, let's hope that Marco Silva's learned a lot from last night, and he approaches the game against Palace on Sunday. Actually, it's quite a big game on Sunday, Russ. The league is really tight now with those places. And if Fulham get a good result on Sunday, it could move us, really positively up the table with some, interesting games coming up. So I'm hoping he approaches Sunday really positively. I really hope that he starts with Chukwueze, Smith-Rowe and King. I really do. And look, we've got to take the game to Palace. We have to take it to them. We cannot do what we did yesterday and sit back and invite pressure. We just can't do it, Russ.
I totally agree. And listen, what they have done the last 2 matches against Crystal Palace has not worked. Okay, so Marco has to figure that one out, prepare the team, and take it to this team and play with no fear and live with the fact that you might be a little bit fragile defensively with one defensive midfielder. But you know what? I can live with that if they take it to Crystal Palace.
But we're fragile anyway, Russ. With them.
Right. It doesn't matter. They can be fragile. They can be fragile one way or another. It doesn't matter. Anyways, great show as always, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. But it is time to wrap this up. For Tony Gold, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk, part of the TalkSport Fan Network.